Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. I patted him on the shoulder, and when he turned around, I hit him with everything I had. I struck from the tops of my boots, putting in all 205 pounds. I felt his nose crack and blood flow, and when he raised his hands to his face, I punched him in the stomach and pulled out a loud oof from him as he doubled over. Another blow to the side of his head, and he collapsed to the ground. I thought about kicking his ass half a dozen times, but then I thought, what the hell? He got the message. I turned to Darcy and said, I think I broke his nose. Maybe you can kiss him and everything will be fine. And then I turned around and walked away from the woman who wore my wedding ring and the man who was my best friend. It was Darcy's sister's birthday party, and it was held at Barney's Roadhouse. We pushed a few tables together, drank and danced to the band's live music, and everyone had a great time. We had been there for a little over 2 hours when something caught my attention. My girlfriend Darcy was dancing with my best friend Mark, and although this was nothing new in itself, what caught my attention was that his hand slid down her back and stopped on her ass, and she didn't push her away or say anything to him. Then I noticed that Mark's foot was pressing against Darcy's, and again she didn't do anything. By then I was interested in both of them, and I moved over to be able to watch them while pretending to talk to the others at the table. The music stopped, and it took a few seconds before they realized it and broke away from each other. They returned to the table, and although they were sitting on opposite sides of each other at a distance of 4 chairs, I noticed that they were constantly looking at each other. On the next song, I was dancing with Darcy and hugging her. I asked, "Is everything okay?" "Yes, why? You seem a little distant tonight. It's like your thoughts are somewhere else or you have something weighty on your mind." "It's just your imagination, baby." "I'm fine, honestly." We stayed on the dance floor for 3 songs and then returned to the table. A couple of minutes later, Mark invited Darcy to dance, and I kept my eyes on them. They were dancing next to each other again, and his hand was on her ass. This time Darcy must have said something, because he quickly pulled his hand away and shot a quick glance in my direction. Half an hour later, Darcy got up to go to the bathroom, and about a minute later, Mark got up and followed her. That night, I saw enough to make me suspicious, so I waited a couple of minutes and then got up and went to the bathroom. Mark wasn't in the bathroom, and since we wouldn't have passed each other if he had headed back to the table, that meant he must have gone out the back door. Reaching for the door handle, I suddenly realized that if Mark and Darcy were up to something, then my exit through the back door would alert them and give them a chance to separate, and then tell me that they just went outside to escape from cigarette smoke and get some fresh air. I went back through the bar, out the front door, and then, moving as quietly as I could, walked around the building. When I came around the northeast corner of the bar, I saw them. They hugged each other and kissed. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't even hear me coming up behind them. I had just finished putting all of Darcy's things that were in my apartment in trash bags when I heard someone knocking on the front door. The key inserted in the lock told me that it was Darcy. I didn't look up from what I was doing when she came in, but I said, "You're just in time to get this shit out of here." I was just about to throw it in the trash. "Can we talk about this?" "No. I've seen enough tonight to understand everything I need to know." "It wasn't what you think it was." "It doesn't matter, Darcy. I saw what I saw, and that was enough. You broke Mark's nose and dislocated his jaw. He was lucky. I should have kicked him half a dozen times and broken a couple of ribs. I've never seen you so cruel before. Sometimes it's good not to see anything. Now please, just take your things and leave." "Please, Rob, I made a stupid mistake. I drank too much, and I wasn't thinking straight." "Yes? Well, it's a good thing I caught you making that mistake before I married you, and not after." "Please, Rob. It didn't mean anything, honestly. As soon as you said yes and put on my ring, you were supposed to be a single woman, and that one man was supposed to be me. You just showed me that I can't trust you. Just take your things and leave." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she began to take off her wedding ring. "Keep it for yourself," I told her. "I don't want it to remind me of you. If you keep it, Mark won't have to buy it for you. Consider this my wedding present." She picked up her 2 trash bags and headed for the door. She opened the door, turned to me, and said, "I'm sorry, Rob. I love you. I really love you, and I didn't do what you think I did." And then she disappeared. She called me the next day and asked if I was ready to talk to her. I hung up the phone. She made half a dozen more attempts, but I always hung up on her, and in the end she finally gave up. Over the next month, Mark made a dozen attempts to get me to talk to him, and eventually I told him that if he came within arm's length of me, I would send him to the hospital for a month. He finally got it, and he stopped calling. 8 months later, Darcy and Mark got married. I had to laugh when I received the invitation. Maybe I should have been something old. As a geologist working for an oil company, I had to travel quite a lot, and some trips were long. Shortly after Mark and Darcy's wedding, I was sent on a trip to Alaska to explore the possibility of developing a new oil field. This forced me to leave the city for almost 11 months, and since I had no one to return home to, I spent the entire 11 months in the area. When I did have some free time, I went sightseeing either to Alaska or Canada. Did I think about Darcy on cold nights? Yes, I did it. I've been thinking about her a lot. I loved her with all my heart, and I was sure she felt the same way about me. We met by chance, literally. I didn't pay as much attention to my driving as I should have, and I backed into her car in the parking lot. She wasn't around, so I wrote down my name and office address on a piece of paper and shoved it under her windshield wiper. 3 hours later, the receptionist called me and said that a woman wanted to see me. She says you're waiting for her. I checked my calendar and didn't see any appointments for that day, but I didn't have any important things to do, so I told Fran to send this woman to my office. 2 minutes later, my office door opened and the most beautiful woman I've ever seen walked in. If there is such a thing as love at first sight, it's what happened to me right then. Mr. Ellison, I'm Darcy Miller, and I'm here to accept your offer. My suggestion? I'm afraid I don't understand. Oh, wasn't that the dinner invitation you left under my wiper blade? Although, I do think crashing into my car is a bit of an extreme way to get to know me. An invitation to dinner? I suppose it was probably just a way for me to contact you so that you could provide me with information about your insurance. But I saw the look on your face when I walked in, so I decided to treat it like an invitation to dinner. It was all too fast for a guy like me, but I didn't lose my brain, so in the end I managed to pull myself together enough to say, "Are you free tonight?" She was free, and 3 days later, when I walked her to the door after a date, she kissed me so hard that my knees buckled, and then she grabbed me by my tie and dragged me into her apartment. "I do not know if you felt the same as I did when I entered your office," she said. "But the look on your face said you could do it, and I don't want to wait another dozen dates while you're trying to force yourself to get me into bed." We were lying with our arms around each other and relaxing in the warm aftertaste of great lovemaking. And I asked, "What size ring are you wearing?" "My ring size? Why would you want to know that? I want to buy your wedding ring in the morning, and I need to know the size." "Are you proposing to me?" "Hey, you're the one who didn't believe in wasting time. I'm just following your example." 5.5. We set a date, but before it came, it was evening at Barney's. It wasn't until I got home that I found out that Mark and Darcy's marriage hadn't lasted that long. It turns out that Mark had a hidden side that no one knew about. He was cruel. After he sent Darcy to the hospital emergency room for the 5th time, she decided she'd had enough and hit him over the head with a cast iron frying pan. And while he was in the hospital with a fractured cheekbone, she moved out and filed for divorce. I found out all this when I had dinner with my cousin Richard and his wife Dee. "Are you going to call her?" Dee asked. "Dear God, no. Why are you even asking?" "Because in a way, you're responsible for what happened between the two of them." "How the hell could this happen? I haven't even been here for 11 months. Damn it, I left town before they even returned from their honeymoon. Every fight they had was about you." "Come on, Dee." "They both disappeared from my life for a good 8 months before I even went to Alaska. How the hell could I become a part of their problems?" "Mark is a loser, Rob. You either didn't pay attention to it, or you accepted it because he's been your best friend since 3rd grade. But he's a loser. He can't hold down a job and can't do anything right. And every time he came home after he was fired, or he left himself, or messed up something, Darcy shook her head in disgust and said something like, "And because of you, I lost Rob." The last time he sent her to the emergency room, they were at the Elks Club, and he had just lost another job. It's unclear if he quit or was fired, but he was whining about the foreman having a grudge against him, and Darcy told him to stop whining like a child and become a man for a change. Mark made a witty remark that she wouldn't recognize a man even if someone bit her ass, and she said, "That's where you're wrong. I had a real man once, and I ruined everything." Are you attacking me with Rob again? On his worst day, he was 5 times better than you could have been on your best day. Mark shouted and hit her from behind with such force that she leaned back in her chair and hit her head on the edge of the next table. It knocked her out and she was rushed to the hospital. 2 days later, she hit him with a frying pan. From what I've heard, she hasn't been on a single date since she moved out and filed for divorce. It's all very interesting, but I don't think I'm going to say hello to Darcy. Have you ever made mistakes, Rob? I've done some stupid things, but the essence of mistakes is that you have to learn from them. And what you have to learn is how not to make the same mistake again. Darcy was a mistake, and I won't repeat it. And I wasn't kidding. I miss Darcy, and not a week went by that I didn't think about her half a dozen times. I still had her picture in my wallet, but I had no intention of seeing Darcy or even talking to her on the phone. She was a story, and although I couldn't get her out of my head, she was going to stay a story. But sometimes what you want or don't want to do just doesn't mean anything by and large. It was a long day at the office, and I went to Ernie's Sports Bar and Grill to have a couple of drinks and relax. I went to Ernie's because I was dating Juanita, the waitress. We had something for about a month. Nothing that could lead anywhere, but just good friends in bed. I was sitting in a booth sipping a beer and watching the Rockies/Giants game on the big screen TV when Juanita put another beer in front of me. A compliment from the lady at the end of the counter. I looked at the end of the counter and almost said, "It's not a lady, it's just Darcy." But I restrained myself. But I didn't refuse beer either. Darcy took the fact that I didn't turn down a beer as an invitation to join me. And a couple of minutes later, she slid into the seat opposite me. "How are you doing, Rob?" I was fine. "How was it in Alaska?" "It's cold." She was silent for a couple of seconds, and then asked, "Have your feelings for me softened at least a little?" "What do you mean? Do you still hate me?" "I've never hated you, Darcy." "Was I disappointed in you?" "Yes, I was like that, but I never hated you." "I'm sorry about what happened, Rob. I'm really sorry. I've really done some stupid things in my life, and Mark is at the top of the list. But I swear to you, Rob, there's never been anything between Mark and me except what I thought was an innocent flirtation. I didn't know that Mark looked at it any differently. You know Mark, he's always been a touchy person, and yes, he did put his hand on my ass a couple of times, but I know you saw it and didn't say anything. It didn't hurt anything. It's just that Mark was Mark. He was the way he always was. That's not what I saw in the parking lot, Darcy. You never let me tell you what happened, Rob. You just assumed the worst and turned your back on me. How could what I saw be anything other than what I saw myself? I got up and went to the bathroom, and when I came out, Mark was waiting for me in the hallway. He said he needed to talk to me about something and asked me to go outside, where it was not so noisy. When we went outside, he told me that I was making a mistake by marrying you, that you might not be able to love me as much as he does. He told me that I should break up with you and be his girlfriend. I laughed at him and said he was crazy. He grabbed me, hugged me, and kissed me. And that's where I got stupid. I kissed him back. I have no excuse, except that I drank a lot, and my ego was comforted by the realization that he wanted me. Besides, what is a kiss? And then you showed up, and my life turned into shit. You married him 8 months later. You'll probably be surprised to know how many friends you have. You kicked me out, so there were rumors that I had done wrong to you, and no one wanted anything to do with me. Mark wanted me, and no one else cared about me. So when he asked me to marry him, I agreed. Another stupid mistake. I sent you an invitation in the vain hope that you would show up and stop the wedding. How would I do that? When it came to the part where the priest asks if there is anyone who knows why the wedding shouldn't take place, I was hoping that you would be there to speak up and say, "Yes, I'm against it because she doesn't love him, but me." But you didn't do it. That would be true, Rob. Even when I said yes, I knew that I loved you and would always love you. Deep down, I knew I was making a mistake marrying Mark. I should have turned and run out of the church when they got to the "you take Mark, Darcy" part of the ceremony, but I didn't have the courage. I wasn't lying when I told you that I loved you the night you kicked me out of your apartment. So why are you telling me this, Darcy? I want you back in my life, Rob. Even if we never get back to what we were, I need you to be a part of my life, at least as a friend. As I sat looking at her and listening to her, I thought about some of what she had said. Mark was a touchy guy, and he and Mark flirted a lot, but Darcy flirted with a lot of guys. It was in her nature. I was worried about that kiss. The image of Mark and Darcy hugging each other stuck in my head. Suddenly, I realized that it wasn't the kiss itself that was bothering me. They were hands. It was because of the way their arms were hugging each other. I got carried away once or twice, especially at Christmas parties when I could play under the mistletoe, but I never hugged the women I kissed. I've never hugged them the way Darcy and Mark hugged each other. On the other hand, didn't I attach too much importance to this? Was it really clear to me what exactly I saw? I was angry and furious. Did I see more in my anger than I really did? Could everything have happened as Darcy claimed? Darcy sat and waited for me to say something. But what could I say? I knew I still loved her. I knew I missed her. But the question was, would I dare to take the risk? This kiss and these hugs will always be with me. The only thing I knew for sure was that I didn't know what to do. So I chose the easiest way out. You've given me something to think about, and although I'm not entirely sure that I'll ever be able to bring myself to accept your version of what happened, I'll think about it. Maybe I'll call you in a couple of days. I saw the disappointment on her face, but she said, "At least that's something. It's more than what I had when I came here tonight and saw you sitting here. My cell phone number remains the same. Feel free to call me at any time of the day or night. I'm serious, Rob. I still love you, and I really want you back in my life." She got up and left me sitting and watching her go. I was waiting for Juanita to come home from work, and I was driving her home when she said, "Do I need to start looking for a new bedmate? Why are you interested in this? I saw the way you looked at that woman who joined you in your booth. Moreover, I saw the way she looked at you. She's just someone I used to know." Bullshit, Rob. There was something strong going on between the two of you, and it was obvious to anyone who can read signs. Be honest, honey. How much time do I have? I'm not going anywhere. Once in her apartment, she quickly undressed and said, "Hurry up, honey. I want as much as I can before you leave." Stop saying that. I'm not going anywhere, I said, and wondered why she was so sure about it. As I undressed, I also wondered why Juanita and I had never communicated except as bedfellows, and almost immediately realized that I already knew the answer. She was fun to be with, she was a beautiful-looking lady and loved making love, but I just didn't like her. I liked her. I liked her very much, but I didn't like her. "Do you know what I want, my love?" she said, and that's what I asked. She liked what she called half on half, and her favorite place to get half on half was to lean forward over the back of the couch. As I drove, I wondered why I started thinking about Darcy while making love to Juanita. I've never done this before. Since I broke up with Darcy, I've shared a bed with half a dozen women, and not once have thoughts of Darcy intruded on me. Then, as Darcy returned to my thoughts, I started thinking about what Darcy had said earlier at Ernie's. Was it true? Could I believe her? In my anger that night, did I attach more importance to what I saw than it actually was? If we were together again, would I always wonder and, as a result, always treat her with suspicion? That's what it really came down to: trust. This is what a relationship requires: trust. A relationship couldn't work out if every time you were apart, you wondered what the other person might be doing. It wouldn't work if every time your significant other came home late, you'd be wondering where she was and what she was doing. It might not work if the other person called and canceled the date, leaving you wondering what he was doing instead and maybe with whom. This question was in front of me when I thought about Darcy and what she had told me. Could I trust her? Even when I was asking myself this question, I knew there was only one way to find out. I slept the usual exhausted sleep, as I always do after an evening spent with Juanita. On my way to work, I stopped at Bob's Big Boy and had breakfast, and when I got to my office, I picked up the phone, called Darcy, and asked her to meet me at Barney's Roadside Cafe at 6. She said she would be there. I was already sitting at the table when she came in, and I saw the look of hopeful expectation on her face when she came up to me. As soon as she sat down, I got straight to the point. "So, what do you want, Darcy? Meet up from time to time?" "That would be great, Rob, but you know what I want? I want you to come back to my bed, where you belong. There are no obligations. Dinner and dancing would be nice, but the point is, I want you back in my bed." "So, are you suggesting a friends with benefits relationship? Call it what you want, Rob, but I need you back in my life." "No obligations?" "None at all. What's the best time to call you this week?" "There's no time like this. Rob, my apartment, your apartment, the motel, your back seat, or mine, but now, right now is the right time." I dropped the tenner on the table, got up, and followed Darcy out of the bar. I have no idea how this is going to turn out. Everything will depend on whether I can learn to trust her again. It may take some time for this to happen, if it happens at all. But we're both young, so we have time. And